Now call on Alec Rowley, after which we'll move to closing speech from the Minister.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. I also would congratulate Jane Baxter for bringing this debate to Parliament today. The Fairer Fife Commission was an important step in the right direction in terms of looking at how we tackle inequality and poverty in Fife. And I congratulate those who served on that commission and indeed the report that they brought forward. It is important, however, that we then start to look at these recommendations, all 40 of those recommendations, and it's important that the partners in Fife who set the Commission up now start to set out the detail of how they intend to see these recommendations actually put into action. And they start to set out in that programme a timescale and actions that need to be taken, and by whom. Because whilst the Fife Partnership, I did have the pleasure to chair the Fife Partnership over a period of time, it was not always clear, as I would say, for community planning more generally, what each partner brought to the table and what their role actually was. And I think that's something that, and it's not a criticism of the government, because I know the government's committed to community planning, as I am also committed to community planning, but I think we actually need to start to actually get much clearer outcomes and much clearer information of who's actually responsible for what is it they're going to deliver, and how all that comes together. And an example in terms of one of the recommendations in here around the living wage, clearly employers have a large part to play in delivering the living wage, as they do in terms of apprenticeships, but I was never convinced of the role of employers at the table in terms of the Fife Partnership and who actually represented them. Indeed, I would say the same about the third sector. I was never convinced that the body that came from the third sector actually represented all third sector organisations in Fife. So I think there is, whilst in the right direction, there is a lot more work to do there. But, you know, if we go back to the first half of the last century and the Beveridge report, the 5 evils that Beveridge talked about: want, squalor, idleness, ignorance and disease. He set out a clear agenda at that time of why we had to tackle these 5 giant evils within society. And the reality is, in one shape or form or another, these 5 evils are very much with us in Fife and across Scotland today. And the fact that there are 75,000 people in Fife living in poverty, indeed, poverty in Fife, you would say in absolute terms, has grown over this last decade, or certainly this last 5, 6, 7 years, and we see with the welfare reforms that are taking place just now. And the evidence of that is that we have food banks, and absolute poverty can be defined where people are not able to actually access what you would describe as the very basics in order to survive. And I would suggest that being able to eat, being able to feed your kids is the very basics in our society that people need to be able to survive. And so the growth of food banks in Moan constituency, in Crosshill, in Cowdenbeath, in Rosyth and in Inverkeithing, the growth of food banks right across Fife and right across Scotland is the absolute evidence that absolute poverty is there in communities across Scotland. And we need to work out how we're actually going to tackle that. If I could pick up, as Roderick Campbell said, there's a lot of recommendations here, all worthy, and we need to see a programme of how they're going to be implemented. But if you take credit unions, for example, I myself am a member of the Dunfermline and District Credit Union, and they have a branch up in Kelty that I save and borrow with. But we need to see the development of credit unions, not just for poor people, but for the whole community. And there's more that needs to be done there, more I believe that the local authority can actually do. So it's nice words to say that we need to grow credit unions and grow them into employers, and I agree with that, and part of the partnership should be about that. But we need to set a clear strategy, a measurable strategy with measurable outcomes about how we're we're actually going to grow credit unions across communities. One of the most successful community credit unions in Scotland is a small credit union up in Blingery in Benarty, the Benarty Credit Union, and it sits now with assets in millions of pounds, and it has helped thousands of people in those communities over the years. It is a massive success story. So, again, there are lessons to be learnt there, but the key point for me is I very much welcome this report. I welcome the work that has been done, but I do say that all the partners now need to look at this, set out clearly how these recommendations can be taken forward, how they can be achieved, how they will measure that, and who, more importantly, is actually going to do what to try and achieve that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.